These things suck. Is that clogged? It's not supposed to come out of there. It's supposed to come out of there. Ooh. That feels like there's a mud dauber nest in there. Something crispy. Rusty. Why is everything gotta have rust in the cooling system? This is gonna take a while to drain. Waiting to make sure it's not going to siphon on me. You can try to not make a mess, or you can invariably embrace the fact you will make a mess. It makes life a lot easier. Holy crap, that thing is heavy. Oh, you can't tell me that's not plugged up. Oh, that thing's got to be 50 pounds. Ah! Yeah. Remember, that radiator is leaking. We saw rust coming out of the drain, and there's stop leak in the back seat. Not good for a cooling system. This thing is going to have to get a lot of coolant flushes before it is daily driven, and I trust it to not overheat. Anytime I see stop leak, I'm going to assume later on down the road I'm going to have to do a heater core too. Anyways, This serpentine belt is totally junk. There's one whole rib missing. I'm gonna have to clean up these pulleys once I get them swapped out, because where that rib had been riding and it was a nice polished surface, now that rib is gone and it's all rusted and pitted right there. If I don't clean that up and I throw a new belt on it, it'll destroy the belt. And the reason we know obviously the belt's junk is the one rib that's completely missing. The reason that happened is because the tensioner failed. You can see there's no gap in between the tensioner body and its mount back here. So that spring has wore out and it's kicked and it's pulling the whole belt over. And the belt sounds crispy, so that's always extra good. Something just fell down and I don't know what it, oh, loose cross member bolt that I saw. The belt's not actually terrible condition, but it's got one rib missing, so it's getting replaced. Well, that fits poorly. That's better. Wrong way. More better. And a fresh used unit off of my other V10 that I just replaced not very many miles ago. Nice and quiet. Bearing's not too bad. Yeah, see all the scaling on the water pump. That'll all have to get buffed off. So a little bit of story time. Right after the last video, I had this thing sitting outside, idling, warming up, and I was all excited because I drove out of the shop for the first time. I've had this truck running 20 or 30 times since I got it. Sitting outside, it had never had a problem before, and it's sitting there idling. I finished the video, finished the outro, showing you guys pulling it out of the shop, and it just dies. Like, shut off, like somebody reached in and just turned the key. I fiddled with it for hours trying to figure out what had happened. You know, it's a used truck, I don't know anything about it, figure out what issues it has. When I got it, fuel gauge said it had half a tank. I assumed that it was correct, as most people would. That's a mistake. I thought it ran out of fuel because I pulled the cap off the fuel rail, pushed the Schrader valve down, no fuel came out at all. Like, okay, did it run out of fuel? So I had the bed off of my green truck, pulled the fuel pump out, siphoned out a couple gallons through it in the tank. Gas gauge didn't move. I'm like, okay, it ran out of gas, not a big deal. So I siphon all the fuel out of my green truck, throw it in here. The gauge does move. It comes up about a quarter of a tank, and I put in 7 or so gallons. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, the gauge works, it just doesn't work correctly, because it does do something. Hop in the truck, turn the key, crank, nothing. Come out, push the Schrader valve down, nothing, no fuel. Did the fuel pump just die? Get into the power distribution center, pull the relay for the fuel pump out, use a power probe, turn the pump on manually. Turns on beautiful, starts bringing up pressure, do a fuel pressure check, comes up to spec, crank the key, it kind of farts a little, but it doesn't run. Typically, even when you're running out of fuel, you're going to get that da-da-da-da-da-da-da until it runs out. This kind of just went pop, pop, and that was it. Thinking, okay, something's not right with fuel pressure, so let's see what else it does. I gave it a little snort of jump start fluid, ether. Does the same thing, just pops. Doesn't try to run on it, just pops. Spent the next 2 hours doing research online. The The camshaft position sensor in these controls exactly when each one of the injectors is going to fire. It's not a pre-programmed, here's the firing order, this is when we send fuel. This actually has to pick up an individual position off of the camshaft before it will fire each individual injector in the firing order. I had remembered when I was crawling underneath the truck earlier, just checking things out, looking for issues, I saw a pigtail that had some damage on it. I didn't think anything of it because it's up here by the water pump. I thought it was a thermostat sensor, temperature sensor of some sort. Dodge always uses two. One of them is for the PCM to get its signal, one of them is for the gauge. The gauge worked, so I assumed the one for the PCM was junk. Come to find out, on the V10s, they put the camshaft position sensor right on the front of the engine. It's actually pretty easy to get to, but it was all covered up in grease. So I'm digging around on it. Let me show you guys what I find. We'll go right down underneath the AC compressor. See the water pump right there, upper radiator hose, or crossover hose coming in, and right there, the cam sensor. You can see it's all clean and shiny because I was playing with it. Now if you look real close, you can see the wires are bare. Now there are 3 wires in here. And however it happened, while the truck was sitting there idling, these wires, which are completely bare for some reason, the corrosion, whatever, they somehow vibrated just enough that they connected, shut down the fuel sense signal, and it quit firing the injectors, which also in turn quit turning on the fuel pump. Once I had figured out how this system works, all I did was unplug it. I came in here with my little pick, stuck it in between the wires, made sure that they were separated, just like that. All 3 wires individualized. I hop in, hit the key, whop, fires right up. Fuel pump turns on, fuel rail comes up to pressure, and it's idling better than it ever has since I got the damn truck. So if you ever run into an issue on a V10 when it will not run, but it will pop and fart, that would be something to be checking out. Now for the wood gas purposes, that actually wouldn't matter at all, because we're not relying on the injectors to fire fuel into each individualized cylinder. We're going to be mixing in the mixer box over here, and the intake manifold is going to be full of a perfect mixture going straight into the engine. So if anybody's ever going to build another V10 wood gas truck, so this is something to keep in mind. Maybe your camshaft position sensor craps out. You don't need it. It's going to continue to run on the wood just fine, no problem. But if you want to run it on gasoline, that guy needs to be working. This truck came with a bonus feature. It's got the steering box brace on it. Of course, it doesn't help much when the steering box is puking everywhere, but you know, I'm glad to have it because I didn't have to buy it. And these trucks are a little bit known for death wobble, so that's a really nice bonus to get with the truck. Now, if only it will come off. Aha! Persuasion. Right into the oil bucket. That's how you do it. That's right. Let's move the oil bucket this time. One steering box. How much fun do you think that adapter is going to be for the steering box brace? I have no idea how they installed it. I don't have a socket deep enough to get on there. I have a feeling I'm going to spin this power steering box around in a couple times. Oh, did we get it? Yeah! It actually came way easier than I thought it was going to. So that replaces the nut on the sector shaft. So we'll throw that on the new box. And when I say new, I mean new used off of my other truck. Oh, that was actually pretty loose. Let me get this surface cleaned up a little bit before I sink this guy on there. A little bit of blue Loctite for good measure. And I don't have an 1 1/4 deep, but I do have a 32, which is pretty darn good fit. Steering box ready to go back in.